It is a privilege for me to address the 2025 South African Auto Week hosted by NAMSA. Colleagues, we gather here today not only to reflect on the justifiably proud legacy of the automotive sector in our country and celebrate NAMSA's 90, or NAMSA at 90, but also to chart the course for the future in a rapidly changing global economy. Ladies and gentlemen, the automotive industry is one of the cornerstones of the South African economy. In 2024, the industry contributed 5.2% to GDP and accounted for 22.6% of total manufacturing output. Vehicle component exports reached 268.8 billion rand, making up nearly 15% of South Africa's total exports and spanning 155 global markets. The industry provides nearly 500,000 formal jobs across assembly, component, retail, and services, and supports around 1 million jobs across the value chain. Beyond the numbers, the industry is deeply integrated into global supply chains, attracting consistent investment, and represents one of South Africa's most competitive sectors. It is a sector that anchors our manufacturing capacity and provides us with a unique competitive advantage in Africa. In recent years, particularly over the past 9 months, the industry has faced some of its most challenging headwinds. As the world pivots into new energy vehicles and the global trading environment becomes more unstable, we're seeing an increasingly competitive marketplace. This has led to a number of OEMs making difficult decisions about their future. However, I'm hopeful that if we work together, we can turn this picture around. Having returned from a recent trip in Saudi Arabia, I see potential in markets that have building auto industries where South Africa can play, or rather that are building auto industries where South Africa can play a significant role, particularly in the component manufacturing space, thereby stabilizing our sector and becoming a global player as our master plan dictates. Our recent engagements with both Saudi Arabia and Algeria have created a platform for cooperation in the area of component manufacturing and an opportunity for our component manufacturers to partner with their counterparts in those countries. So in essence, I'm saying that those markets have said we are prepared to allow South African investors to partner with our local companies and create component manufacturing capability in those countries, both Algeria and Saudi Arabia. And that's an opportunity we must take advantage of. Of course, it comes with local conditions. Of course, when you go to Saudi, there's the policy around Saudiization of local manufacturing. So in essence, you would have to ensure that you have a Saudi partner, but it is a great opportunity for South Africans to establish the component manufacturing capability with their Saudi partners, and we must take full advantage thereof. Now, we were debating with the team as to whether we digress from the prepared text. But maybe inspired by the General Secretary, it would be important to reflect on the increase of, if you like, Asian products in the South African market. I think it is important to report in this instance, and this is on the basis of recent engagements with both China and India, but also industry in both China and India, about one, the transition of existing SKD capacity in the country into full CKD production capability in the country. And in both those markets, the companies that are currently having SKD operations in South Africa have committed to transition to CKD. Our duty is to work with these companies to ensure that we're able to reach that stage where they become part of the local production capability to support, of course, South African industry, but to also take advantage of South Africa's skills, expertise, as a platform from which they are able to grow access to markets, taking advantage of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and Agreement. So there is some degree of progress. We've also had engagements with other investors in these markets who have also committed to either cooperate with existing OEMs and utilize excess capacity in these OEMs and or build new factories in South Africa so that they are able to produce in South Africa. Of course, at the right time, the right announcements will be made. So the future of our industry, I think, remains secure. It is transitioning, but the industry remains secure. Ladies and gentlemen, what does it mean when we say the auto industry is at an inflection point? Which critical interventions are necessary from all of us to move the needle and leverage the turning point? Global markets are rapidly transitioning away from internal combustion engines. The UK and the EU, in line with their CBAM policies, carbon border adjustment mechanisms, which together account for almost half of South Africa's vehicle exports, have committed to ending the sale of new fossil fuel vehicles by 2035. If we do not adapt, we risk losing these key export markets. Already the shift is underway here at home. In 2024, 15,611 new energy vehicles were sold in South Africa, representing 3% of the local market, with sales in hybrids and electric vehicles steadily growing. Our domestic industry has attracted over 12 billion rand in new investments in NEV models. Government led by the DTIC is playing its part by creating a supportive policy environment. We amended the automotive production and development program to include electric vehicles in their components. 150% tax deduction for qualifying investments in EV and hydrogen vehicle production will take effect from next year. Partnerships with universities and research institutions are already developing the skills pipeline for the next generation of auto engineers and technicians. But critically, South Africa holds a unique advantage that few nations can match, namely our natural resource endowments. Our country can rejoice in the fact that we host some of the largest deposits of platinum, manganese, nickel, cobalt, and rare earth metals, all essential inputs for batteries and hydrogen fuel cells. This gives us a once-in-a-generation opportunity to move beyond exporting raw minerals and instead beneficiate locally by producing battery-grade materials and building competitive battery manufacturing value chains here in Africa. To seize this opportunity, government, led by the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition and the Department of Mineral and Petroleum Resources, and international partners such as the World Bank, has developed a national critical mineral strategy. This strategy entails some of the following. To secure supply chains for our own NEV industry, to attract investment into gigafactories and component production, and to support the emergence of hubs for battery cell assembly, recycling, and research. This is not just an industrial project. It is about positioning South Africa at the heart of the global clean mobility revolution, not as a taker of technology, but as a maker of value. If and when we succeed, we will not only safeguard our export markets, but also create thousands of new skilled jobs, spur innovation, and deepen our role in Africa's green industrialization story. Dear colleagues, in 2024, Africa became our industry's second largest export market, with sales worth 48.1 billion rand, an increase of 12.4% over the previous year. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area presents a game-changing opportunity. It will enable duty-free access to new markets beyond SADC. It will support regional value chains where South Africa can export semi-knockdown kits for assembly in other African countries, and it will reduce logistics costs by encouraging investment in infrastructure. But beyond vehicles, the AfCFTA also opens the door for regional collaboration in battery manufacturing and mineral beneficiation. Many of the critical minerals essential for the EV transition are not only found in South Africa, but across the continent, from cobalt in the DRC to graphite in Mozambique and to lithium in Zimbabwe. Through the AfCFTA, we can integrate these resources into a continental battery value chain. South Africa can leverage its manufacturing base, research capacity, and mineral endowments to lead this process, while our neighbors contribute their own strengths. Together, we can build an African battery industry that reduces dependence on imports, adds value locally, and turns Africa into a competitive global hub for clean mobility solutions. This is why South Africa is driving the development of an African Auto Pact working with industry. And this is to harmonize policies, to attract investments, and to ensure that as the continent industrializes, it does so around shared prosperity and green growth. We note that the rules of origin for automotive products are still being negotiated within the AfCFTA through our trade representatives. But we're also hopeful that we'll be able to soon reach a commonly beneficial solution. Our vision for the auto sector that creates value from Cape to Cairo is one that is within reach if we're able to pull together and co-create this value. Ladies and gentlemen, the automotive sector has been at the heart of South Africa's industrial story for more than a century. Today, it stands as a critical pillar of our industrial future since its strength sustains jobs, investments and exports. Its transition to new energy vehicles defines our readiness for a low-carbon world, and its integration into the Africa Continental Free Trade Area positions us as a leader on our continent. But most importantly, our abundance of critical minerals and our manufacturing capabilities give us the chance to lead, not only in building cars, but in powering the cars of the future. If we seize this moment, we will not only secure South Africa's competitiveness, but also place our continent at the forefront of the global energy transition. Let us together ensure that the next chapter of the automotive story is not written about Africa as a market for others, but as a continent of producers, innovators, and leaders. South Africa stands ready to drive this vision for our people, for Africa, and indeed for the world. Thank you very much.